My job is all about purpose.
Just the ability to make a difference, to help someone be able to go home at the end of the day.
My great-grandfather started the volunteer fire department in Springfield, Nebraska. My grandmother was a nurse. My uncle was a fire chief in Atlanta, Georgia. So somewhere down the line, it was my purpose to be doing this.
Yeah, we're a family here.
The data we get from Rapid SOS is life-saving.
Have you ever met a 911 professional and asked, what's the worst call you've ever taken? Well, here's your answer. I heard your last breath the night you flipped your four-wheeler. I tried to call you the day you committed suicide by driving your car into a tree. Blue face, cold to the touch. I helped you with CPR after you found your infant face down, not breathing. It messed me up. I did everything I could, but it wasn't enough. You were with me from the beginning, Grandma. 27 years later, I took the 911 call when you died. How fitting to be there for me in the beginning, and I was there for you in the end. I miss you, Grandma. I am 911. This is but a glimpse into the world of emergency dispatch. But what is it really like to answer a call during someone's nightmare? What is the impact of the first responder answering the call? Available on Amazon or where you purchase your favorite books and ebooks. Imagine listening. Your worst day is our everyday.
This is Jordan, and you're listening to the Code 7 Podcast Network.
Warning. This episode contains the 3 A's of podcasting: adult content, adult language, and awesomeness. You've been warned.
Still to this day, I am a person who's like, if the TV is too loud, I am like, turn down the TV. My God, like, what are you doing? Like, I walk in, I'm like, oh, I'm constantly in this state of like hyperstimulation to sound. And I did not realize until therapy years later that it was a trigger. Noise was a trigger to me. And I didn't know that because I had been this. So like, basically what the therapist had told me that not only did I have relationship PTSD, which is a whole other episode we can talk about later, but I also had work-related PTSD, and one of the triggers was sound. I was being constantly triggered by noise and overstimulated by sound. And I did not recognize that about myself. And like, so like I had to like learn that it was okay to sit in silence and that it was okay to be comfortable there, because I gotten to a point in my career where like I was craving silence.
Welcome to Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them.
Going on, this is Ricardo with the Code 7 Podcast Network, and this is Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them. This episode is sponsored by Rapid SOS, Safer Together, the leading AI company in public safety. And a shout out to subscribers as always. Thank you for everything. It is May 8th. May 8th. In a couple days, it'll be Mother's Day. So happy Mother's Day to all of the awesome moms out there. And next week, Thursday, something like that, is my birthday. My ass is going to be 45. Holy crap. Getting old, man. A lot of things going on, as always. A lot of great content going out there and everything. I just got a new camera as well that I've been playing around with and doing a bunch of stuff. And it has been really, really good. Got classes coming up, keynote at the Michigan Conference. If you're going to be at the Michigan Conference, I will see you there. And then we've got National NINA and then National APCO and just a bunch of other stuff going on. So I'm excited for all of it, and my guest just sent me a private chat message saying you're old. I know. But with that said,
Um, uh, with that said, I am going to bring my guest up because we've been talking about I'll just say all of this started. What we're going to be talking about today, this topic, started with a question that I put out there on social media, on TikTok, Instagram Reels, and such. And a lot of people responded. And my guest and I were talking about it as well. And we just kept saying, we need to just record an episode on this topic alone and just put it out there for folks. So, my guest today, good friend of mine, Keely. What's up, yo?
Hello, everybody. It's me again, and you should be not surprised at this point.
Right, we've been doing a lot of recording together. It's been good. We wrapped up, for those who know or may not know, our most important seconds, and that was a good episode. That very last one, wrapping it up
Yeah,
completely with Dr. Rao, and just a lot of the stuff that we were talking about. We got a little deep there towards the end.
we did. So we had talked about talking about some of this like prior to going into it, and it was actually Dr. Rao who like teed it up for us, and we were like, oh, well, that was easy. So it was, yeah, that was a little deep, but it was nice. It was good. It was a good way to end it, especially going into Mental Health Awareness Month and things like that. So it actually like
Right.
it worked perfectly. For what it was. Like it was a lot of fun to do it too. Like I remember in the beginning we weren't really sure.
Right.
And then we were like, this is actually not so bad.
Yeah, this is
So
actually
yeah.
good. It's been awesome. And so yeah, like you said, with this month being what it is as well, the whole thing teed it up for what we're going to be talking about here today. So for those who are watching and listening who might not know about your background and everything, a quick overview, please, of your public safety background.
How do you quickly cover 30 years? First of all, like
Well,
talking about being old, I am older than you. So but that said, yeah, so I started my career in public safety in 1996 as an EMT, volunteering in my hometown, and then it just escalated really quickly. So I moved into a 911 center in 1999 before, our Y2K. Like I
that's
worked that
right.
night. I worked that night.
It's my senior year in high school.
Oh, shut up. I don't want to hear it. If I could take your face right now. Um, yeah, so I started in 91 in 1996, and I moved on. Like I worked OEM at both municipal and county levels. I worked for Rutgers University, working EMS command during all of their football games. Lots of fun. And then moved on to a regional 911 center, was promoted to deputy director, and then retired in 2024 as the executive director in my old center there. And I miss those guys so much, like to the core. Like I miss that team. They were incredible there. I wish they knew how incredible they were, and it's like that was the hardest decision. And it wasn't leaving. I was ready to leave. I was ready internally, like screaming, ready to leave. And, but I didn't want to leave them. It was them that I wanted to stay for.
Yeah, I feel that. I was the same way. And this kind of leads into what we're going to be talking about today for this episode, because I've had people reach out to me and ask me something similar to what my question was out there to everyone. And so the question that I had posed was, have you ever gotten so used to the chaos, the noise, whatever it might be, that you feel uncomfortable with silence? And again, a few people have reached out saying, how do you get used to the silence? Because a lot of us, well, all of us in all forms of public safety, but especially 911, you are constantly listening to the bells, the whistles, the sirens, people yelling, screaming, crying, yelling, radio chirps, like all kinds of things. And then when you're alone, you almost don't know how to act. You don't know how to respond to certain things. And so I put that out there to ask to see what other people thought. or how they've dealt with it. And I ended up saying on there, I said, I'll be honest. The first day after my whole career was done in dispatch, I remember waking up. I'd only had like 4 hours of sleep, and it was also my first day working in the private side of 911. So I had my last day and then my first day right off the bat. And I remember calling my boss, the VP of the company that I was working for at the time, and I said, "So, what do I do for today?" And he goes, "Listen, this is what I want you to do. I want you to take the next 2 weeks and just be with your family." And right away I said, "No, I wait, what?" And it wasn't because I didn't want to just hang with my family. It was, am I not getting paid? Because, I've been going, every 2 weeks getting paid or whichever. And he goes, "No, don't worry. You're still getting paid. We're paying you for these 2 weeks to just do nothing because you have been on the go for all of these years in dispatch. And the private side is a different beast. You're used to that type of chaos and everything, but when we get started, it's not going to stop. And I just want you to enjoy your family now." And I said, Okay, okay," which was weird. And I remember hanging up with him and going in and telling my wife back then what he had said. And she's like, "Well, that's good, right?" And I said, "Well, yeah." I said, "But I don't know what to do." And I remember sitting at my desk in my bedroom and I got a pen and paper and I sat there and I thought, "What the hell are you doing?" I was like, "You're not going to be taking calls. You're not even doing anything today." But I felt like I needed to do something. And it was the hardest thing because even though they were sitting in the living room, um, I it was still quiet in that room and I didn't know what to do. And it was I almost felt like antsy a little bit. So yeah, I told people that, and then people just started commenting on this one on TikTok, and I'll read through some of the comments here in a minute. But what are your thoughts on that? How can you relate?
They're so relatable. Like one of the things that I would like to point out is like early on in my career, I definitely didn't know how to sit in silence, right? Like if I was holding a conversation, I had to be the one that was always making sure the conversation was still going. Um, but I also would not answer my phone. So like when I started my career, we didn't have a lot of cell phones. We had,
Mhm.
then we had Nextel, which is a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
Uh, but like we were on a two-way radio all
Yeah.
the time. But there was something like in the beginning where it was like I would like get into like a group of people and it was like I couldn't just sit in that silence. Somewhere around 17 years in, I want to say, I would drive home without the radio on. I would drive home in complete silence. And it was because there was always just so much noise. Like you said, the bells, the whistles, the alarms. I mean, when I started, we had an alarm panel physically in our 911 center that we had to acknowledge when people were set up with that service, right? So it
Okay.
was like you had to acknowledge the alarm. Um, just the noise. And then I would get in my car and I would just be like, I don't want to hear anything. I literally cannot handle, like I was getting overstimulated by noise. And I was again like I said, I was like way into my career when that started to trigger me, where noise was actually triggering. The sounds of like a loud fan triggering. The sounds of like a phone ringing triggering. Like I did not realize that I was triggered by sound. Still to this day, I am a person who's like, if the TV is too loud, I am like, turn down the TV. My God, like, what are you doing? Like, I walk in, I'm like, oh, I'm constantly in this state of like hyperstimulation to sound. And I did not realize until therapy years later that it was a trigger. Noise was a trigger to me. And I didn't know that because I had been this. So like, basically what the therapist had told me that not only did I have relationship PTSD, which is a whole other episode we can talk about later, but I also had work related PTSD. And one of the triggers was sound. I was being constantly triggered by noise and overstimulated by sound. And I did not recognize that about myself. And like, so like I had to like learn that it was okay to sit in silence and that it was okay to be comfortable there, because I gotten to a point in my career where like I was craving silence. And then fast forward to, it gets different when you move into administrative roles, right? Like, first of all, your world becomes smaller because there's not as many people who sit in leadership roles in these, especially in 911, especially when you're in a law enforcement heavy state. Like usually you still have some type of supervision over you, a lieutenant, a sergeant, whoever drew the short straw in the law enforcement center is now in charge of dispatch this week. So there was always somebody, but then where I went, I was now a civilian and we had autonomy and there was nobody else like that around here. Right? Like there was very few people who were sitting in civilian roles who had autonomy. So you kind of like, you move into this moment where you're like, I am not always on the floor, but I'm still listening to the noise of the floor, right? Because, and I'm now reviewing calls, and now I'm sitting in this different level of leadership with I don't have any peers here. So there was that too, where I was adjusting to that movement. And then 8 years later, I retire. And the first night that I am, and again, I have been a emergency responder for now at this point, I think it was like 29 years, right? Like I always had a pager or a phone on me that was going to go off and tell me I had to respond. Working in OEM, same thing, right? Like we were going to be called into major incidents. Working in an environment where somebody can call out, and now my phone has to be available because maybe I'm the on call, or maybe they just told me that if I don't answer my phone, I'm going to be in trouble. So, or they'll send a cop to your house and come bang on the door and tell you got to get to work, right? So you're always living in this state of like, response mode, right? Like somebody's going to need me somewhere. So my phone has to be attached. My pager has to be attached, whatever device it is. I mean, we've moved past pagers and now our phones just go off for everything. Right.
Right.
But like I lived in this state where my phone was on me 24/7, 24/7. Like I have this with me all the time and it cannot leave my side. And I remember I retired on November 15th. It was my last day in the center. And I got home that night and I was getting ready for bed. And I had set up my office space, not quite as big as it is here, but like I had a little laptop and I had a pen and a paper next to it. And I take my phone and I'm like, I don't know where to put this. Right. So there was a charger on my desk and I put it down and I stood there. It was, I don't know, 10, 11 o'clock at night. I don't typically go to bed that late now because I don't need to, but I was like, I'm so used to like being up late and still managing things, call outs for the next day or, and I put my phone down on the charger and I stood in front of my desk and I stared at my phone. It must have been a solid 5 minutes of me staring at my phone and then just slowly walking out of my office. Like, I don't need to be next to my phone, right? Like my kid's too young to be out. So like, he's not calling me. My husband is home. Right. My cats aren't going to call me. So like, who's going to need me? Right. It was the weirdest feeling of that, just let down, that moment of like, nobody's going to call me in the middle of the night and tell me I've got to come in because the system is down. Fiber's been cut. Emergency has happened and they need me to report back. I need to manage something or major storms coming in. Like, I don't need to be constantly checking the weather. What? Who said that was okay? And my friends who have come to depend on me for the person who always knows when the weather is coming and what to prep for, they're like, this retirement thing isn't working out for me because you were my go-to to know what I needed to do for weather. And now you never, I never had to check the weather. Who knew that would be like catastrophic for my friend group, right? Like,
right.
But this is like, it was just this like weird adjustment to normal. And I don't know if it still is normal, but it's like, it's, now we sit in this strange place where I don't need to constantly check my phone. I mean, I'm still pretty bad at it. I pretty much will text you back
Oh,
5 seconds after you text me,
yeah.
but because I got to
I'm the
clear the
same way.
bubbles, I got to clear the dots.
That's
But
right. Yeah, that's the other thing. I Yeah, I know exactly what you mean, and, when these folks have reached out asking, "How do you get used to that silence and stuff?" I told them that it was gradual work, and, really, it's just having something that was in the background while I would work, because that's what I realized was I needed a shot of that hustle and bustle that's going on. Not anything crazy, but just kinda needed something in the background, and so I would just listen to whatever music. However, what I will say for everybody watching and listening, if you don't know this already, if you're working from home on something, do not play music with lyrics, and especially music that's your most favorite music in lyrics, because you'll go through, like, 10 songs that you've been singing and, "Oh, what work have I gotten done?
what was
Nothing."
I doing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I'll listen to um EDM, like, you know electronic digital music, and there's no words, it's just beats, just oof 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 oof, and it's just repeated, it's repetitive,
Yeah.
the rhythm, the sounds or whatever, and it's just playing in the background. It's not super loud, but I'll just be working, and actually that puts me more into a zone. And if there is something, this is going to sound stupid, but if I really need to focus on something, then I'll turn it off, just like when you're in the car and listening to something and turning it down makes but it's true because 'cause you're focusing more instead of the sound or whatever, and, my siblings have made fun of me before because 'cause they're like, "Dude, like, it's really gonna help." I'm like, "Actually, it does." It seems stupid, but, it's because you're focusing more on what it is. That's why a lot of newer cars, it will automatically turn the music down when you're reversing or something, and then it turns it back up after you've reached a certain speed. And, so just like that, if I'm working on something, I'll turn the music off. But that's what I've told people. It's like I had to really work on it and learn to be comfortable in silence and not feel like I needed that sound to feel like I was doing something. And I think that's what it is as well, is that we almost equate the amount of what we do and accomplish by the amount of noise and things that are going on sometimes. And I had to learn how to work through that. And I admit it on the video as well, and I'll admit it here too. Every now and then it creeps in where I need a little bit more going on sound wise around me because it's quiet in this room, and I will be spinning in my chair like I need to. So I will go to like a coffee shop, order a coffee, and I'll just work there while people are walking around. Sometimes I'll just sit and people watch for a moment, and I'm like, "Yep, this is what I needed. I just needed a little noise around." So I have gotten to the point where I've become comfortable with noise, and I've also become comfortable in complete silence. But it took some working on it to actually get to that point. But in the beginning, which is why I put that question out there, in the beginning, it would get uncomfortable at times because I'm like, one, like I felt like I wasn't doing enough, or I needed that noise because I was so comfortable with the noise that the silence was just like, I can't do it. Like I felt antsy.
You know what, though? I still have to say, despite the fact that I'm overstimulated by noise, as you said, there are times where I can't seem to get my groove, right? Like I
Mhm.
can't seem to figure out, like, why can I not focus on the task at hand? And then there's actually an ADHD channel on like Spotify and Apple Music, and I will literally put the ADHD channel on, and it's the type of tones and sounds that they put on that like all of a sudden I don't it's the strangest thing. I will just like turn it on and I'll sit for a second, and then suddenly I just go right into whatever it is that I'm working on. And I never, like, I don't know why that seems to work, but like talking to therapists, they're always like, because you have always worked in that chaos arena. So like silence, you can't find your focus sometimes. So like you need that like moment. And the same thing with so I'm an avid reader. Like I like to read. I've always liked to read. I used to read on the desk. I'd have my book. I would read and answer calls in between, if we had enough downtime, right? Something I realized is after I got out of there, I haven't been able to read, but I have been able to use an audiobook. Why? Because I'm listening to it. I'm not sitting there trying, like having all the outside noise, trying
Right.
to, you know what I'm saying? So like I put the audiobook in. I've gone through in my retirement and even before, I've gone through 170 audiobooks. So
Damn, dude.
yeah, that just goes to show you, but it's like because your focuses are different now, right? Like, so like
Right.
when you're in a 911 center, you're not realizing how much of that background noise is kind of making up your existence. And again, I am overstimulated by noise. Like I know this now, right? Like I get in and I'm like, and it took me forever to figure out why I didn't like that. But conversely, I also sometimes cannot find my focus in the silence because my brain is doing like all the things and it can't get into the groove of like finding its slot. And then all of a sudden I put on that background noise and I'm like, oh, right into what I need to do. And there's times where like, and Ricardo will tell you, like he'll text me in like 10 business days, I'll finally answer because I was in the groove. And like I finally got that like moment of like clarity to be able to function, but I wasn't able to find it because it had been too quiet. So
Wow.
it still happens now, even to this day, where like, as somebody who you would think would rather sit here in silence and be able to focus, that's not necessarily the case. I need that little bit of sound in the background to make those noises make sense in my brain where I can get into where I need to be. But it's still a work in progress. It's not, I'm a year and a half out now, right? And there's something about the disruptions. There's something about the start stop. I actually had this conversation with a colleague of mine. I was in a meeting with her, and one of the things that I say is difficult for me is that start stop, because we get the 911 call. We're in the middle of something else. We're running plates. We're entering motor vehicle stop. Phone rings. Bam. I answer the phone. I get that call. I cat it. Go back to whatever it was I was doing in that moment, right? And I'm finding working on the private side, I am busier now than I ever was in 911, which is really hard to consider. But it's because there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of balls in the air, a lot of things that are going on all the time, which is probably why we thrive in these environments. But what we struggle with that maybe most people who didn't start in our careers as public safety professionals is the ability to prioritize differently, right? Like, so like my colleagues can tend to be like, okay, I'm working on XYZ project and I'm fixing that. As long as there's nothing else of higher priority that comes in, I'm doing that. I'm doing this and I'm doing this next. Whereas somebody will be like, hey, can you take care of ABC project while I'm working on XYZ project? And what do? We take ABC project, do it and send it back out and then get back to XYZ project, which is disruptive. But it's because we are so used to the intake and push out process instead of the reprioritizing project, right? Like everything's a priority in 911, right? Like 911 rings, unless it's like, oh, I've got an explosion that just occurred and it's going to prioritize, like, so sorry, the dog complaint is going to have to wait.
Yeah.
That's much different of a prioritization skill, right? Like that's anchoring things in emergencies and what takes priority of that. But like when you're working in private sector, they're all pretty equal unless it's something like the CEO is like, I need you to take care of this now. That's a little bit different, but like everything you're working on has a priority, but it's like, I need to do just this. And then I need to do just this. And I still struggle with that start stop because somebody will give me something. I feel like I've got to take care of it right now and give it back to them instead of just being like, sure, can I get that to you by end of week?
Yeah.
I think it has to be done like right then, like within the hour.
It's like a version of our CAD. That's why, because everything is on there, and you want to get you want to get everything dispatched out. And so,
Yep.
to everyone who's watching and listening, this is what I'm about to say isn't to scare anyone, but it doesn't go away. I this July, geez, just in a couple months, this July will be 13 years that I have been out of dispatch. However, all of this, all of it remains. It's always a work in progress. It's just like when I talk to people about, opening up and sharing their stories and all of this. I still, I share my stuff all the time because it's still therapeutic, and it's always going to be therapeutic. It's a work in progress. You will never be perfect. And I think that's another thing that people need to know is that you don't have to be perfect, but you can learn how to manage these things and work through it and have other people that are going through it and that you're talking to about all of this stuff too. Because yes, it gets better and gets better and gets better, and it's easier to talk about everything. But you're managing things because, as you were saying, there are some things that will end up being some sort of a trigger, which is why conversations like this are so important. That's why we're finally having this conversation as well. And I want to look at some of the comments that some folks wrote, and we'll talk about those. One of the people that commented on here is a paramedic. So what they say, definitely want to see what you have to say about it, but I'm going to save that one. Let me go with this one first. This one says, "Hey, Ricardo, May 11th, it's just in a few days. May 11th marks 5 years since I stepped away from the comm center. I've learned how to sit in the quiet now, whether it's at home or out in nature, and actually feel the peace. But in public, the switch flips and it all comes back: the awareness, the instinct, the constant scan of everything and everyone. Conversations drift in whether I want them to or not. You don't spend 23 years being the calm in other people's chaos, listening to what others miss and just turn that off. I guess that will always be a part of me." What are your
There's so
thoughts?
much truth. There is just so much truth about that. Public spaces and like that chaos that it brings, right? Like I cannot handle crowds. Cannot, because I am constantly in this like, and I know this happened to you and I think we were, I forget what conference we were at, but we were out eating and we both overheard a conversation that was happening and both of us kind of like stopped and like we're like, oh, is that a domestic violence, right? Like because you're so in tune
I
with
think we were in Portland or something.
maybe it was Portland. I can't remember where we were, but I remember like both of us like stopped because we were like, "Oh, I heard that," right?
Mhm.
And it's like there's like triggers and like noises and certain sounds and tones. And that I think is the scariest part of it is the tone of somebody's voice will trigger us because like we'll get rigid because now we're tuning into like, is there something that needs response here? Right. And just recently, this is actually a really funny story. I think I told you about it, but like just recently, my kid plays soccer. He's on the weekends, he goes to specialized training because he's a keeper. And I was standing, I normally stand with my back towards everything and watch the room. It's a habit. I think we all have it, right? Like, especially in public safety, it's like we're scanning the room, right? I happen to be stepped a little bit forward. So people were passing behind me. And all of a sudden I hear, "Hello, Keely," from behind. And I was like, "Officer Blath." And I didn't turn around. I knew who it was standing behind me. It was one of my police officers that I had dispatched for years.
No.
And he was actually like, "I fucking hate that you people can do that without even turning around." And I was like,
Voice
it's
recognition, our
it's
own voice
it's
recognition.
it is like I heard it, right? Like I knew who that was behind me. And but I was just like standing like this and I was like, "Officer Blath, how are you?" And it was just like he was like, "I fucking hate that you could do that." He's like, "That is probably the creepiest skill set dispatchers have." But I think there's just something, it's like we hear the tone, we hear the voice, we recognize it. And like I can do that without even thinking. And I don't even know, I don't know if is it a superpower? Could it be a superpower
I would say so.
instead of a hindrance? Because it's not, I'm not annoyed by it. Right? Like I'm not, it's not something that is troublesome to me, but I guess for some people it might be. But for me, I don't find it troubling to have that awareness, to have that capability to just tune people in and out and like hear certain tones and change. Like it gives you this strange situational awareness that I think many people don't understand, nor would they even realize they would want it if it was given to them as a superpower, right?
Yeah.
But I think that's definitely the case for sure.
I think for some people, they might lose their mind,
Yeah,
having, that keen sense of awareness, and, I say that too because I'll be walking around with my kids or something, and, I'll comment on how someone is acting, and they'll go, "How do you know that?" I'm like, "I can read them just through their voice and their tone."
their tone. It's the
Yeah,
tone. It's
just through
something they
that,
do. Yeah.
and then it we turn around, they're like, "Holy yeah, that was going on." I'm like, "See? I told you."
Same soccer type environment, right? There was this feeling that was happening on the sidelines. I was listening to other people. They were getting escalated. The vibe had shifted in the tones of people's voices. And it's like right as the end of the game was coming, something happens on the field, which is a little triggering. I will admit that, right? But the person and the people that were standing next to me bolted onto the field. I made eye contact with my kid, and we have a signal where it's like it's time to go.
Yeah.
So I tap my head like, and that's like so that we don't have to communicate to each other across, like with words. We can just look at each other, and so he knows. I made eye contact with him, tapped my head, like this is not a we're not staying on the field moment. This is going to escalate because this is not going to get any better, because I could feel the shift in the tone of how people were talking. It wasn't, and it was like the energy was suddenly different in the room, but it was mostly the tones of their voices that shifted the energy. And I was like, it's time to go. And sure enough, a whole blown fight broke out on the field. And I was like, let's go. We're done here. We're not sticking around for the coaches to talk either. We're done. Let's go.
Yep.
Right. So it's like, but being able to get yourself out of a situation that is suddenly shifted, like the
Right.
energy has shifted, something it doesn't feel right. You just know. And it's a superpower. I'd like to say it's a
I would
superpower.
I would say so. I would say it's definitely a superpower. It's a gift and a curse
Yeah,
because there's sometimes some things that you don't wanna hear. But
correct. I
but it
totally
happens
agree.
anyway.
I
Um,
totally agree.
one of these other comments here, this one is kind of on the flip side a little bit. This person says, "I find sirens soothing, but I actually enjoy silence when I'm off." And then they finish off their sentence with, "I isolate a lot just to reset."
Yeah. Yeah, I did. That's so like when I shifted in my career from that not wanting to be in the noise all the time to I need to sit in the silence, I did the same. I definitely, if you did not get my attention before I hit the door of my house, I was not going out. Right? So like if you called me like, "Hey, meet me at the diner for dinner." Right? As long as that happened between when I stepped out of work and got home, you'd have my attention. If I got home, once I was there and I was in the silence, there was no bringing me back out into public, because now I've already gone into decompression. I've already got into that moment of I am going to go so far into silence right now that I am not dealing, and I will not go back out in public because I don't want the noise. I'm overstimulated and I don't. That's where, like I said, in the beginning of my career, it was all about the noise, did not wanting to be alone, not sitting in silence. And then there was just this pivotal shift where I was like, do not disturb after a certain time frame. And I think there is something to be said about that for somebody who is in that part of their career where it's like I'm in that self-isolation moment. Um, it's also super scary to be there sometimes, right? Because maybe you haven't seen anything outside of work and home in that amount of time. what helped me was I had a balcony in my apartment when this started happening, and I would just go sit on my balcony. So at least I was outside and I could people watch from a distance on my balcony. Um, but I definitely think that's how I was too, is like I just get to a point where it was like self isolation felt better than the overstimulation of the world.
I feel that. I feel that with like sometimes when I've had a heavy, heavy imagine listening session, if I don't get a chance to go back to my room to just kind of sit, even for just like 5 minutes in just silence, then I sometimes feel a little off. And the only reason is because there's been so many stories that have been shared, and I'm absorbing every single one of them. And I feel like I absorb them a little different than others in the room because others are hearing in the room, they're listening. But when I go to the person, for me, it's like we are talking to each other. It's just me and that person. And then, of course, we do the funny part after that, right? But some of those are pretty heavy, and I feel like I hang on to those a little bit so that I can take them with me and then like let them out, and then I'm fine. But there will be times where I don't get to, and I have to go to whether it be a meeting or even another class right after that. I'm like, all right, here we go. And I just have to hang on to that in the back of my mind and then go back to my room and just kind of meditate it out. And so, with that, sometimes I need that silence. I need to just chill for a moment to process and then just let it all just kind of meditate it out, like I was saying. Um, because I love that session. I love doing it and I love being there for everyone. There's just some of them that are a lot heavier than others, and I need to go and just kind of chill because people have asked me a handful of times over the almost 10 years that I've been doing this session, and they've said, "How do you do it?" And I've responded with, "What do you mean?" I I I'm there for every person, and they share there's like, no, 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 like you are taking some sort of secondary trauma from all of those stories. So what do you do to like get it out so that it's not staying within you? And then I tell them like, well, I'll go back to my room and I'll just chill for a moment and just kind of meditate. Uh and and then it goes away and then I'm, donezo. And then I'm just so happy and proud of everyone who's had the chance to be able to release and get that out there.
It's like
Um,
your QA folks though, right? Your QA folks
yeah, this
are
is
people
yeah,
we need to
pretty much the
check in
same way,
on,
right? Yeah.
right? Yeah, they're listening to all those calls and those heavy calls. And most of the time, I mean, not for nothing, I know what it was like in our center. If it was a certain category of call, it got
Mhm.
QA'd. So it's like no matter what, you're listening to those high trauma. And, Sarah, God love her, she was the person that was listening to all of those. And there were times where she would walk in, you'd see the tears in her eyes, and she'd be like, going for a walk. And I'd be like, okay, cool. You want to talk about it first? She's like, yes, let me decompress and then go for a walk. So it was like a lot of that. It's that
For
same
real.
secondary trauma for sure.
Yeah, I did QA as well as a supervisor for our teams, and we had to do them for our supervisors as well. We would
Mhm.
each, do one for each other, and it was one emergency call and one non-emergency call. And I remember a couple people from my team. I don't know if I was on vacation or what, but I did one of them, and I just sat there and I thought, "Holy crap!" And I called my person in really quick, and I said, "Hey," I said, "How are you doing?" I said, "I just listened to this call." And then, we had a good conversation about it, but I just thought, "Geez, like, I didn't even know about this." And she goes, "Well, just wasn't really sure whether I should say anything. I didn't know. I didn't want to feel, embarrassed or whatever." I was like, "Dude, no, don't ever feel embarrassed. Like, this was crazy. I'm glad that you're okay and that this call ultimately came out good." But man, yeah, no, I understand about the QA thing as well. This other person here says silence is loud. I briefly left 911 dispatch recently. However, I will be returning soon. But I go to the coast and sit by the ocean or ride out to the woods/mountains. I know if I'm around a crowd of people, my anxiety kicks in real bad. So I tend to isolate and listen to music, read, or turn on a movie for background noise just to drown out the silence.
Hmm. Yep. I mean, it's all it really is interesting that it's you get into this place where it's like silence is deafening,
Yeah.
right? You get into that like I need something in the background, and for the longest time, I was the same way. Now my TV is barely on. It is on at night though, because I can't fall asleep with the noise in my head. I need something else to focus on, which sucks, but at least I'm sleeping. Because there was a whole time I wasn't. So I will take that. I was a diagnosed insomniac due to the PTSD uh, from work.
Mhm.
So like when you start to do the hard work and you do the therapy and you get through it and you're on this other side, we're like, silence is actually my friend, and that's lovely. Um, but I remember those times where silence was just deafening, and you needed something to fill the void, something to fill the space, something to fill the other thoughts that are in your head, the calls that you're remembering, the workload, the arguments you have at work. Because let's be serious, we all know that they're not the best environments for a lot of places, right? So like you're also dealing with that, and I understand the concept of like I need a little something in the background to make it go away. So I just when you get to the point that silence becomes your friend, it's a lot different, but it's also I can't focus completely in silence either. So there's I guess uh, there's a little bit of yin yang that has to happen with silence. I
It's
think,
true. Yeah. There's
especially for those of us.
yeah, and that's why I say, don't, because all of us in 911, we have this perfectionism type thing that comes in with a lot of things, especially because we're dealing with lives. Like you have to almost be perfect, but also you have to remember that you are human, and that all of these things that we're talking about, all of these things that continue to be a work in progress, even though you are comfortable with silence or you are comfortable with noise or whichever, it's always going to be a work in progress. You just have to find that balance. Just like you're saying, the yin yang. There's got to be a balance of that light and dark. And it's again, that's why conversations like this are important, so that there are other people who might be listening who think, shit, this is good stuff. Like, I thought I was the only one. Or, people who thought that they've not only been alone, they felt lost or whichever. You've got people talking about this. And more people need to talk about it and continue talking about it so that we can continue to work on these things and feel comfortable. Like, man, I I recently, and for a lot of people who are working on a lot of this stuff too, probably wouldn't like what I'm about to say, but or the environment that is. So a couple of weeks ago, I was in Las Vegas. One, Las Vegas is enormous and there's people all over the place anyway, so that might make people feel, panicky, right? But the weekend leading into that week of the Navigator Conference, WWE had WrestleMania. And Monday was the Raw after Mania, as they call it. And it is always there's always something that happens during that broadcast. Well, I wanted to go to it, and I sat on the floor, third row from the ring,
God.
and it was sold out. And there were, I don't know, 14, 15,000 people in that arena. And between the pyros going off, feeling the flames in back of me, and just the almost tribal type of response of people chanting for certain pro wrestlers. That's how comfortable I am now with big crowds and noise. And I think it's also that almost that connection of everyone chanting at the same time for in a unison of just having a good time. Like, you will get to that point where, I mean, even at concerts, being right on the floor. My brother and I, months ago, we went to see the Wu-Tang Clan, and we were second row center right in front of the stage. Method Man and everybody's walking up, they're rapping, they're getting down. We're like, yeah, and it's just so loud in there. But you end up working up to being comfortable with all of those things. And maybe it's also the addition of, it's something that I really like and something that I'm really into, that I've become comfortable with all of it now, but also at the same time, also comfortable with silence. Because after being there for like 3 hours, I'm like, I need a little bit of silence.
Yeah.
And you become comfortable with it.
Yeah, for sure. Like that moment, and then your ears are still ringing that boo.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it
But
got
you realize,
really loud.
there's some days of dispatch, and I would challenge anybody out there that's still in like the thick of it, and is has a particularly busy day at work, and then just go and sit in your car. You're going to hear that same tone of that silence for a hot minute that we're talking about, even when you're in crowds. And it's just interesting to like correlate it to like the heavy noise of being in a loud, overpopulated environment, overstimulating environment, to that same overstimulation inside a 911 center. And then you sit just in silence for 30 seconds and you're like, I can hear my head ringing. Like,
Yes.
holy crap. Right. Like that's, hi, what's going on in here? And I find it fascinating that we have the same correlation, even though you're in a room, and you might not be in a huge room, but you could be in a huge room, but you might not be in a huge room, but you still have that same experience,
Mhm.
even though you were a little bit more isolated one, but you're still having that same reaction to the noise, the
Right.
tone. Yeah.
Yeah, sitting in the car after like a crazy night where it seemed like it was only like 4 hours, but it was 12 hours, right?
Yeah.
Because you're just going, going, going. And you also have that adrenaline as well still going through you. I remember leaving with some of my coworkers, and we would look at each other and we'd go, we just did that shit. Like, we just rocked it, man. Like, hell yeah.
Yeah.
And that's those good moments as well. And then I would get in my car and I'd be driving, no music on, just trying to decompress from the crazy night. But I this you triggered a memory for me. I would drive, and I would turn and look around in my car, because I would still hear like the and I'm like,
Yeah.
is there a repeater in here? Like, like, I can still hear those sounds
Yep.
sometimes, or like just the like, that sound of the radio feedback when someone's clicking over. And I would have to sit there for a moment and like shake my head and go, "What? You're out? No, you're out of work.
You're in your
You're
car.
fine.
You're
Yeah,
fine.
you're in your car." But almost felt like I could hear traffic,
Oh
and
yeah.
not traffic cars, like radio traffic.
There's still times where like I'm like, was that a radio? Did somebody hear something? Did somebody's tones go off? What was that? I I interview ECCs. That's my current role. I interview ECCs, and I was on with a center about 2 weeks ago,
Uh-huh.
and their 911 phone rang, and I immediately like I was like, oh, I like just my
Yeah,
back straightened.
right.
I
It
was
comes
like, oh,
back.
it comes back immediately, and I was like, oh, your phone sounds exactly like my old phone, and I feel like I need to answer it. Do you need help? Do you want me to take it remotely? How does this work? Yeah, so it's like you still have those moments, those triggering moments where, I don't think that ever goes away. It's like part of your DNA now.
Oh yeah,
You've
yeah.
become part of 911 for sure.
In January, when we were out there in Pittsburgh, excuse me, and I was at the Butler County Center, I heard the tone go off for the phone. I was like, "Oh, 911," and I I didn't realize that I said it out loud, and they turn and look at me. I was like, "That's the tone. Like, that was our tone as well." They're like, "Oh." I was
Yeah,
like,
because you just
"You'll
know.
remember it, man. It doesn't
Yeah,
go away." Yeah,
it
it
does
doesn't
not
go
stop.
away.
It does not stop.
This last comment here. So it says, paramedic here. I luckily was able to get a job working in a transfer center where I connect docs to each other and set up transports for the patients between hospitals. It's just enough chaos to keep me from feeling uncomfortable at work. But outside of work, the silence can be too much. I wear headphones and listen to music, podcasts, or TikTok almost all other times.
Oh, that's fascinating. So, I say this all the time, and I think I've said it to you once. Like right now, my job, I touch 911 from a safe distance, right? Like I'm still touching it, but it's from a safe distance. And I think that that has significantly helped the transition. And I feel like this individual probably the same, right? Like they found something that is just close enough, but far enough away where you're not so embedded in it anymore that it's not like everything you do is live, breathe, and die, public safety.
Mhm.
And like there was a point in my career where like I could sometimes answer my own 911 call depending on the time of the shift, right? Like when I first started, if I worked during the day, which in the beginning of my career was probably overtime, and then they didn't have an EMS crew, my lieutenant would come in and be like, "Go answer the call." So like, not only would I be the call taker, but I would actually be the responder to the scene. I would just take my own EMS call, and that was like when you think about how embedded in public safety some people can be. I mean, we've got volunteer firefighters that are out there that are also working as dispatchers. So you've got nurses who work part-time as dispatchers. You got, they're all very embedded in that public arena, public safety. And it's like they're touching it in every direction and their hands are getting pruny for being immersed in that pool for so long. And then you come out of it, it's like you're almost gasping for air, but then you're also missing it, right? Because you're like, I need to get back in. I don't feel comfortable here. So it's like being able to find that medium where you're still just close enough, but yet far enough away. It kind of helps you with that, that that loss a little bit, because it feels like a loss when you finally step outside of it. It feels like a loss, but if you're still kind of just like one finger on it, like, this is nice. Just gonna touch it a little bit.
Yeah.
It's just like, so I feel like that's what this person has done for themselves is they've given themselves just a little bit of chaos to make it feel right, but enough to be able to take a giant step away, but then understanding that they still need that background of chaos a little bit to function like a normal human. I feel like that is completely normal and part of the
Agreed.
process.
Yeah.
Not everybody will ever get to the process of being comfortable in the silence. I mean, I know plenty of people who have been out of it for a while who still have to have a radio or have to have something going on in the background, or, I consider myself an anomaly that I am now able to be like, no, I'm good with silence because everything is too overstimulating for me. And I think I'm the anomaly. I think that there are plenty of people who still need a little bit of chaos, who have stepped out of this arena and need that noise. And I think that is perfectly acceptable. I think if you find what works, stay there.
Mhm.
It doesn't, you don't always have to be comfortable with the silence. It's okay that you're not, and it's okay that you're still trying to figure out what that little dose of noise or that little dose of chaos is that works for you, that keeps your adrenaline regulated.
Right.
And I think there's just so many people who are like, but I'm not normal. And it's like, but you are. It's okay.
Yeah. You are normal.
Yeah.
You just need to talk about it.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing is that people need to excuse me, feel comfortable talking about it. And if you're watching and listening to this right now, here's your permission to feel comfortable to talk about it or to talk about it in general, and build to feeling comfortable talking about it more, because I think that's what one of the biggest things is people end up getting lost because they don't have a person to speak to, or they feel like they can't reach out to someone. And especially if you're listening to this and you are out of dispatch, just remember, once dispatch, always dispatch. Just because you're out of it doesn't mean that you don't belong anymore. It doesn't mean that, and I know the imposter syndrome will set in. I've spoken to a lot of people who have said that that has happened, and they feel like they can't reach out to anybody. Reach out, please. And if you're listening and watching this and you haven't heard from someone in a while, reach out to them too. because I believe the count for 2026 now is 7 of our own who have committed suicide. And I feel that maybe if those folks, whatever the circumstance might have been, or anyone for that matter, if we can just talk to each other, I mean, that's 7 too many. And it happens in all of public safety, but we need to start talking specifically about dispatch, even more so when it comes to suicide from our own. So that's another reason why we're talking about this, because it's very important for us to continue conversations like this and to learn to be comfortable. Like Keely was saying, you're not always going to be comfortable. It's finding that balance in that light and dark of the silence and the chaos. And it's okay to, as someone put it in one of my most recent Imagine listening sessions, and I wrote this as part of the One Voice column as well, that it's okay to cry, and it's okay to remember things that hurt, but ultimately it's okay to cry. So I love that we were able to do this, that we were able to talk and have this conversation, because I think a lot of people have been, well, a lot of people that I know have been reaching out and asking this question specifically. And now we've had just about an hour's worth of talking this through and how we've dealt with a lot of these things and how we continue to not just deal with it, but manage it and go back and forth. Because, yeah, like I said, I'll admit there are times where I need a little bit of that chaos too, and I'll go sit in a coffee shop or whatever. But for me, what really helped, and I would love to go back in time to tell myself this, is to get comfortable with the silence in the sense of meditation. For me, that's what worked for me. Just meditating, just sitting there in silence. And I will say, it's not an easy thing to do. It is hard. It is a hard thing. Like, I bought a fucking book to read different techniques. And one of those techniques was to sit in a comfortable position, close your eyes, and imagine a lit candle and concentrate on that flame. And if other thoughts start coming into your head, start again. And it took a month or two for me to really focus on that flame. And once I did, it was then working on my breathing techniques. But it was all of that at the same time. But once you see that flame, then you really focus and put it together with the breathing. And I was able to hold that. And I it's weird. I kind of feel it right now. But when I finally got it, I felt a warmth from the top of my head all the way through my body. And I held it for a few minutes, and just that few minutes, holy moly, that was the start of something. Now, with everything, with everything, there can be an addiction to that space of enlightenment. So be careful when you're meditating. It sounds weird, but even in the book that I was reading, it was like, don't do this all the time, because it's almost like it's almost like a drug. People say that a lot of, drug addicts, the reason they become addicts is because they're chasing that feeling that they had in the beginning. And with meditation, once you like really tune in on it, you might try to go for that as well, and you're like trying to constantly get that. So just be careful when you're meditating and going through all of this thing. But for me, that's what really helped, and it was just like 5 minutes whenever I felt like I needed it. I haven't meditated in a few days, so we'll see what happens, because I'm working a lot. But again, for me, that's really what worked for me.
I have to say this, and I'm going to say this to the people out there, because I know I've told you I cannot meditate to save my damn life.
That's why I'm saying it doesn't work for everybody.
And
But
that's the thing. And like that's why I wanted to like I also want to say it's okay if it doesn't work too, right? Like
right,
I've
yeah,
tried. I have tried. I do yoga, but when I'm doing yoga, I'm listening to the directions of the yoga. I'm not meditating. I'm listening to what comes next, which is that that's fine too, right? Like, but I want to like give you all permission to be like, well, Ricardo said the
yeah,
meditation
yeah.
worked for him. And you know what?
It's
I'm
just
gonna
something that worked for
it worked
me.
for him.
Yeah, it worked
It
for me.
doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
I cannot get the just shut up. I can't get it to get there. I have tried repeat. I want to. I will sit there and I will try the things and listen to the techniques and it doesn't
Well,
work.
so I will say this, that flame thing that I mentioned, that was the only time.
Yeah.
Once. The only time that I ever reached that. And other times that I've meditated, I've just sat for a couple minutes and just breathing. And really, it's
Yeah.
mostly just those breathing techniques and just um, centering myself. Really,
Box
that's
breathing.
what it is. Yeah, box breathing.
Box
That's all
breathing
it
has
is.
worked for me
Mhm.
sometimes. Like I can sometimes get into the box breathing idea.
Yeah,
But honestly, like what worked for me was writing. I had
there
no
you go.
idea. Like, I had no idea that that was something that I like journaling and
Mhm.
writing. And again, that won't work for everybody, right? Because
Right.
there's some people out there that are like, I'm not a writer, or I don't want to put my thoughts out of my brain like that. And totally get that, right? Like, it's the same thing with therapy, right? Traditional therapies don't work for everybody. Like
Mhm.
I was not somebody like I got more anxiety about making the appointment and getting myself there because I was a single mom. So that meant I also had to navigate getting a babysitter, getting somebody to come, explaining to that person that I had a doctor's appointment. Like that to me was not an idea. Like I couldn't do it. Then there's some people that work virtually, like virtual appointments work great. Then there's other people that it doesn't. And then for me, it was Talkspace. Why? Because it was a writing category. And it's like putting that together was like, I'm a better writer than I am a communicator, right? Like a verbal communicator. So, like, I can put 95 thoughts down and get it on paper and then feel like, oh, well, I got it out, right? So, like, again, there are different techniques and not everything is going to work or fit
Right.
into what you need. And it's like when something doesn't work, don't give up,
Mhm.
try another something, even if that means that you got to call somebody and be like, hey, what worked for you?
Right,
Or,
exactly.
yeah, right. Like you could just try different things. It doesn't have to be like, hey,
It's
maybe vacationing is your thing.
See, so what I was gonna say next is actually a form of, you can see it this way, of, um, something that will help you is whatever it is that you enjoy. If you enjoy sewing or cross stitching, dude, that's a version of also meditation in a way, a different way. And what I mean by that is just right there. Painting, all it is focusing on something. That's all it is. It doesn't have to be it doesn't
Yeah,
have to
right.
be ohms or anything like that, sitting with your legs crossed, traditional, whatever
Yeah,
you see on TV or whatever that is meditation. For me, another form of meditation, which again, I say meditation, but all I really am saying is focusing on something. And it can be anything that you love. Shit, it could be gaming. It
yeah,
could be you gaming for a couple hours. That is a form of you focusing on something. Also, that'll help your brain later on when you're older.
when you're
But,
old.
like, yeah, but, like, painting, for me, what you see back there, making T-shirts, that process alone was a form of just meditation or focusing, because that was therapeutic, that process. The
Yeah,
painting that you showed, you're focusing on that. Um, the yoga that you're talking about, I do yoga as well. And you say that you're just listening for the next pose or whatever, but you're focusing on
yep,
that. So
on that.
in a way, that's what you're doing at that moment. You're releasing all of these things at the same time, and you don't even know it.
Yep.
And
But that's the
later on,
trick.
you're like, "Oh, I feel better."
That's the trick though, is
Mhm.
when you're doing that, you shouldn't actually notice that you're trying to let go.
Right.
It'll just happen,
It just happens.
right?
Yes.
So like that's where I think like for me painting, I didn't even realize that painting worked for me until I had gone to like a sip and paint or something with some friends. I didn't talk the entire time. All the girls around me were talking, drinking. I did not speak. And then when I finally came up from it, my friend was like, "Are you good?" And I was like, "Huh? Yeah, I'm fine." I did not realize that I was focused on something else, and it was the first time I felt my brain let go. And I was like, "Huh." And I did it in a public setting at a sip and paint where everybody's drinking, there's music going, right? There was all this chaos around me, and I was like, "Here." I didn't and again, but that goes to show you like some people need silence. Some people need noise to focus.
Right.
Clearly I need noise to focus, but I also don't want to hear it when I'm not focusing. Right?
I had a moment a few months back where there was so much work going on, because we were working together on a lot of different projects. I didn't realize, I guess, how stressed out I was until I started doing something that I was really focusing on that helped me release the stress that I was feeling. And if you look behind me right here where it says Star Wars, that is all Legos. That is a Lego set. I put together probably about 10 of them. And I didn't realize that that's what was going on. And that was a form of, I guess, my own type of therapy, that I was releasing all of the stress because I was focusing on putting all of those together. My youngest daughter comes up to me and she goes, "Let me help you." And
No.
I snapped out of it and I said, "Wait, what?"
Huh?
Because I was that in tune to what I was doing, and it's weird to say, but it was just like a moment of enlightenment that it was just focused on that. And I think I
Yeah.
might have been playing music or something too while I was doing it, and I was just going and going and going and going, and then when she came in, it was like, "Huh? What?" And I said, "Oh, yeah." So what she was doing was she would go a couple steps ahead of me, and she would just get the pieces that I needed for that one part, and she would put it there, and then I would put that together. It was like a little assembly line that we
I love
had
that.
going. Yeah, and it was a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun doing it, but all of this to say, as we go into the wrap up of this, for everyone who is watching and listening, find what works for you. Take some of the stuff that we have said that is based off of our own experience. We are not doctors, we are not therapists, nothing like this. We are just simply sharing our experience. You can take what you want, but just know that you're not alone. And there are ways to manage, again, the light and the dark, the yin and yang, this balance of the noise, the chaos, and the silence, because you can work and manage on being comfortable within both environments. And it might not feel like it right now, but don't give up, because it's just a work in progress, and you learn how to manage it, and you learn how to find what works for you. And like Keely said, it's okay to ask people. It's okay if some of these things that we're talking about doesn't work for you, because where I talk about traditional meditation and stuff, that doesn't work for Keely. Where some of the painting, well, I don't know, I think I could get into the painting actually, but all I'm saying is
I'll
that,
send you one.
yeah, thank you, is that you're not going to always be able to, find the same thing with other people's techniques or their experiences, but you can try. And there's nothing wrong with trying and it not working, but
Yeah.
also know that it's not going to happen overnight. Like, you have to work on these things. Because just really quick, for like the breathing techniques, I was like, "Oh, this is bullshit." It actually didn't really work, but it's because I was expecting it to happen like that.
Yeah. That's the
Because
dispatcher in us.
exactly, yes. I was just gonna say, because that's how we work. That's how our mind works. Everything is
Yeah.
fast. Come on, it's gotta go. Go, 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 go. And if it doesn't work that fast, it's just like the same thing with people on social media. They wanna see those reactions. They wanna see those likes and all this other stuff. And when it doesn't happen, they think, "Oh, my post failed." No, it's that you gotta give people a chance to see it
Yeah.
and consume it. So again, it's all um a work in progress, and just find what works for you, but don't give up. And you're human. You're human. This was good. This was a good conversation. I'm glad that we were able to do this. And Keely, any parting words as we wrap this up?
Mental Health Awareness Month, right? These conversations are super important, but you mentioned the 7, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like holding space for the 7, but don't become the 8th. You can reach out to us. We're here. Reach out to your colleagues. If you're struggling, don't be afraid of those things. The conversation has to change. And I think we're doing better. But I also want everybody out there that is listening, or maybe they're in a dark place right now, and know that there are so many of us out there that have been in those dark places and are willing to reach in and help. And you have to take our hands. You have to. And we're all going to be there. I mean, you wouldn't matter. I can guarantee you it would not matter who. It doesn't have to be me. It doesn't have to be you. Anybody in the space would be willing. You just have to give them that chance. And I don't want an 8th this year. So please just reach out and reach in when you feel like somebody is struggling. And if you aren't comfortable, notify somebody else who might be.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't want to be the person that reaches in, at least alert somebody and be like, hey, this person doesn't seem to be doing all right. I don't know what to do, and ask somebody else to reach in as well. So I want that going out on Mental Health Awareness Month, that we need to pivot a little bit because something we've done isn't working, because there should be 7 more people here with us today.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to make sure that we don't end up losing another.
Very well said. Thank you, my friend, for being on. And for all of you who are watching and listening, thank you for what you do in our profession. And this episode has been sponsored by Rapid SOS. And if any of you have any questions, comments, you ever want to be a guest on the show, you can email us. And it's good. The easiest way to do it is to simply go to links, and that's links.co/IM911, and you'll find all of my information on there, my email, social media, where to follow, where to hear the latest episodes of Within the Trenches podcast, as well as Imagine Listening podcast, and the free link for the Trenches community in there as well, where you can find the Imagine Listening books and any Dispatch podcast merchandise. You can find it all there. Again, it is links.co/IM911. This can be seen on Facebook, YouTube, as well as LinkedIn Live and X. And then any clips from the show, as well as IM911 stories, can be found on Facebook Reels, Instagram Reels, and TikTok. And then you can listen 24/7 on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, your favorite podcasting app, and withinthetrenches.net. Have a good one, everyone. We will see you all in the next one.
Imagine listening to someone's worst day every single day. Imagine listening as someone experiences life, through their worst nightmare to the miracle of birth or a life saved. I'm Ricardo Martinez, a former 911 dispatcher, and for years, I've been recording the voices of a hidden world, ours. I've provided a space for 911 dispatchers to share their powerful stories. It started as a peer support session and continues. Dispatchers sitting together, sharing out loud, or writing down what they couldn't say. Some stories will grip you. Stories of heartbreak, resilience, and calls that haunt us long after the line goes quiet. But Imagine Listening is more than heavy emotion. It's about healing. It's about laughing through the chaos, lifting each other up, and reminding the world that dispatchers are human too. The lighthearted will balance the heavy. Experience the power of storytelling, a podcast for the thin gold line and those who want to understand it. This is Imagine Listening. Your worst day is our everyday. Subscribe now wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.